So right now, just to sum it up, and I know you all have been paying very close attention, but Donald Trump is ignoring court orders. He's attacking every aspect of the legal system, including law firms, and he's standing by as threats against judges continue to rise. And I just want to start by stating perhaps what sounds extremely obvious here. This is not normal, and I mean by historical standards, too. I mean, ignoring a judge's order is not at all normal. Insulting and attacking a judge on social media or whatever form of communications there may have been at points in history is not normal. And calling for a judge's impeachment simply because you didn't like their ruling is definitely not normal. I mean, look, lots of presidents have been mad at lots of judges in the past throughout history. I mean, throughout history, both presidents of both parties have had courts rule against them. But none of them acted like Donald Trump. Let's go back to 1952. President Truman seized control of steel mills to make sure there was continued production during the Korean War. The Supreme Court said he acted unconstitutionally, which would make any president mad, right? Even irate. But did Truman ignore them? Did he call for the justices to be impeached? Of course not. He immediately ordered the return of the steel mills to their owners, even though their workers immediately went on strike. That takes us to 1974. The Supreme Court dealt a huge blow, of course, to President Nixon, ordering him to hand over the Watergate tapes. And Nixon complied, even though it was the nail in the coffin for his entire presidency. And I'm not excusing anything he did here, obviously. I'm making a different point. But he didn't call for the justices to step down. He actually stepped down himself. He didn't really have a choice, resigning from office only 2 weeks later. Then there was the time in 2006. The Supreme Court ruled that President George W. Bush overstepped his authority in ordering war crime trials for detainees at Guantanamo Bay. Yes, true. But listen to how Bush responded to that ruling at a press conference that very same day.
I haven't had a chance to fully review the findings of the Supreme Court. I want to assure you that we take them very seriously. I will protect the people and at the same time conform with the findings of the Supreme Court.
Look, I'm not excusing anything that led to that ruling, but the point here is he said, I will conform with the findings of the court. Haven't heard a whole lot of that lately, have we? In 2016, the Supreme Court blocked President Obama's immigration plan that would have shielded as many as 5 million parents from being deported. And it would have also helped them find legal work in the United States. He was frustrated and he was upset, believe me, but he abided by the ruling. Then there was the time in 2022 when the Supreme Court blocked the Biden administration from enforcing its vaccine or testing requirements for large private companies. This was, remember, kind of part of the height of COVID. Of course, Biden didn't agree with it. Believe me, he didn't agree with it. But here's what he said in response. The court has ruled that my administration cannot use the authority granted to it by Congress to require this measure. But that does not stop me from using my voice as president. Look, the point here is this. There have been moments in just about every presidency, Republican presidents, Democratic presidents, when a court ruled against the guy sitting in the Oval Office. None of these presidents liked the outcome, but they abided by the court's decision. And right now, Donald Trump is doing the opposite. By any standard, it certainly appears that he and his administration deliberately violated a court order when they flew hundreds of Venezuelan immigrants to El Salvador to be imprisoned without any due process. That's what differentiates us as a country, by the way. And now they're stonewalling the judge, who's trying to find out if his order was willfully ignored. On Thursday, the judge accused the government of, quote, evading its obligations, saying their response had been woefully insufficient. And during a hearing on Friday, he put it like this. The government is not being terribly cooperative at this point. No kidding. And he also vowed to get to the bottom of whether they violated his order and who was responsible. This isn't just a squabble with the judge. The Trump administration is claiming, out loud by the way, that they're willing to defy a co-equal branch of government.
We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
This judge has no right to ask those questions. You have one unelected federal judge trying to control foreign policies, trying to control the Alien Enemies Act, which they have no business presiding over. The judge had no business, no power to do what he did. This judge had no right to do that.
Of course, the judge had every right to ask any questions he wanted, by the way. That's how the system works. This is the sound, though, we just heard of one branch of government basically giving the middle finger to another branch of government. That's what we're hearing. Trump and his administration are trying to overtake the courts. They're trying to become the arbiters of the law so they don't have to abide by it. They're trying to upend the separation of powers that have been separate for hundreds of years for a reason. And this isn't one of those times when bucking tradition and breaking norms is a good thing. Sometimes it is. This is actually dangerous. Threats against judges are on the rise in the form of, this is how it was described in the New York Times, bomb threats, anonymous calls to dispatch police SWAT teams to home addresses, even the delivery of pizzas, which is a seemingly innocuous prank, but one that carries a pretty clear message. They know where you and your family members live. And the administration has now turned to targeting tourists and legal immigrants who have expressed views that the government believes to threaten national security and undermine foreign policy. That's their argument. That's the kind of thing that will keep happening as Trump tries to wipe a branch of government that is the last line of defense. So we can see there's a problem here, to state the obvious, and we're faced with some tough questions. I mean, what is the solution? And what is our system able to do? And again, those are tricky questions to answer because his history, as I've noted here, doesn't exactly serve as a guide. Joining me now is Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. He's the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee. He is the perfect person to talk to about historical precedent, the moment we're in, all of the things. So let me just start with kind of where I ended there. I mean, you've said there's an attack on the Constitution. That feels very clear here. I think a question a lot of people have is, what can be done to stop it?
We got 125 cases that have been filed across the country, and 50 federal courts have already entered temporary restraining orders or preliminary injunctions against Trump. So let's start with the positive news that the courts are working, they're doing their job. That's why they're talking about impeaching all these federal judges. That's why they're attacking Judge Boasberg for insisting on answers, because you can't disobey an order of a federal court. As Chief Justice Roberts emphasized this week, the proper response to disagreement with the substance of a judicial opinion is to appeal the opinion, not to try to impeach the judge, certainly not for people to go out and visit threats upon the judge and the judge's family. And so we've got to play these cases out in court. The Trump administration has just thrown caution to the winds. I mean, the great example of this, of course, is the birthright citizenship executive order. The first sentence of the 14th Amendment says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. It is just as plain as day. And we have Obama judges, Biden judges, Reagan judges, Trump judges, all striking down what Trump did. In fact, the Reagan judge said it was the easiest case he'd ever decided in his life. You don't have to be a lawyer to know what's wrong with you. You just have to know how to read. And in case after case, they say, you have just totally blown past the Constitution. So we've got to stand up for the independence of the judiciary. And we see this happening all over the world now, that when courts block an autocratic executive or someone with dictatorial ambitions, they begin to attack the judges, they attack the lawyers, they attack the law firms. That's what's happening in America right now. And so the whole country has got to stand up for the independence of the judiciary and for the rule of law.